You already know what time it is. Welcome back in to the NFL with AJL, episode 78. We're live on a Tuesday. You could have been anywhere else in the world, but you're right here tapped in with us on the show. Appreciate y'all bearing with us on a couple of the reschedules for the show tonight, but you knew we were coming at you with a loaded NFL podcast. A little bit of a different setup this week. We're going to be on the AA tomorrow with the college football content with my brother Alan Spradlin. You know we can't miss out on college football and having him with the takes as well. Hope everybody's had a great October as we are getting into November. If you wish me happy birthday on Sunday the 27th, really appreciate you guys. I was blessed enough to turn 27, still being able to do this podcast at a high level. So if you came out, if you supported with me on that day over the weekend, if you shot me a text or a call, appreciate you guys showing the love and support. As always, before we get into the show tonight, y'all please make sure to like and share that stream wherever you may be watching. Subscribe on YouTube as well. Hit the bell on the page so you never miss a post of any type of content. You already know what the QR code does. It's every bit of social media and podcast content we throw at you at the NFL with AJL on all social platforms. If you can't find us, I promise you're simply not looking hard enough. And like I said, we got a packed show coming up tonight. Should the New Orleans Saints tank with losing 6 games in a row, we've got the Eagles blowing out the Bengals, what it seems like, the Browns upsetting the Ravens, and much more on tonight's show. Wanted to say thank you so much to you guys as well. We are at 975 subs last time I checked. That is 60 more subscribers than we had on the show last week when we went live with episode 77 on Wednesday. So really in 6 days, you guys have given me 60 extra subs, 10 subs a day. Couldn't be more grateful for it. So y'all keep it coming. Y'all are loving the Saints content. Y'all are loving the college football content. And we're not going to stop bringing it to you guys. As you know, that's what we do every week on the NFL with AJL. So let's go ahead and jump into the top of the show, as I want to start with a Super Bowl bubble for the NFL season. We know that we are now through 8 weeks of football, so essentially halfway through the NFL year. We've got 17 games. Of course, the playoffs come after that. So I want to get at you guys with a Super Bowl bubble. Who is in? Who's floating on the outside? Who are the teams that are really pushing for a Super Bowl spot this year? And who are those teams floating on the outside, whether it's the quarterback, whether maybe it's the roster in general, it's the coaching that will keep this team out of the Super Bowl. So let's start with the teams that are inside the Super Bowl bubble. Let's go ahead and give us the Buffalo Bills. The Buffalo Bills are clearly inside the Super Bowl bubble. They can be a team that goes to represent the AFC in Super Bowl 59 in New Orleans. Josh Allen is looking fantastic on the year. He could very well be in the MVP conversations, possibly looking like the best quarterback in the NFL right now. We know the Amari Cooper trade over to the Bills as well was really a catalyst for this team. We see the first catch for Amari Cooper as a Buffalo Bill was a touchdown from Josh Allen. Sean McDermott still doing Sean McDermott things. This team still seeming like one of the most consistent teams year over year, whether they do or don't what they should do don't do what they should in the playoffs. This is a team that's capable of putting up 25, 35, 45, 55 points on some of the best teams in the NFL. And if you keep that recipe up with a guy like Josh Allen, with a defense like Buffalo's been able to bring around over the last few years, continuing to work on that run game as well, the Buffalo Bills are 100% in the Super Bowl bubble. Obviously, the Kansas City Chiefs, you guys might not think that's an obvious reason, but when you're back-to-back Super Bowl champs, when you have a coach like Andy Reid, when you have a guy like Patrick Mahomes, and I think the biggest thing about the Chiefs this year is we talked about it last year, right? They looked very beatable, but also with the injuries this year, with how banged up Kansas City has been, we see them go get DeAndre Hopkins because Rashee Rice is out. We see that, Hollywood Brown is not... We see that Hollywood Brown is not active in the season as well. So knowing that Kansas City has this resiliency to them, still sporting one of the best defenses in the NFL, Steve Spagnuolo obviously doing things over there in Kansas City to really give them an elite defense and a lockdown defensive unit over the last 2-3 seasons, as we've seen with Kansas City. The Baltimore Ravens are going to be inside the Super Bowl bubble as well. These first 3 teams, probably not a surprise to most of you guys. We are going to have some controversial teams potentially in and floating outside of the bubble as well. Lamar Jackson very well could be in the running for MVP. I know they just recently lose to the Cleveland Browns. Divisional game. Jameis Winston looking a little different in that game with a 2-time coach of the year. So don't take all of your stock out of the Baltimore Ravens yet. Yes, they're still one of the most explosive offenses in the league. We know they have Harbaugh as their coach. The defense is always, going to be a strong suit of this team. It would be nice to maybe see them get some safety help. We know Kyle Hamilton looks good. Marcus Williams can look very solid as well. But when you see how some of that safety play can improve, especially in the Browns game, when you see, I can't remember the safety's name. He got beat by David Njoku on a 20-plus yard pass. The Cedric Tillman touchdown, he got beat on that one as well, that Jameis threw to basically win the game. So the Ravens, they still feel confident to be a Super Bowl team. We know they have a lot of aspects that are at the disposal to help them go and represent the AFC in Super Bowl 59. The Detroit Lions. I'm glad to see Detroit back in this position. I'm glad to see Detroit is able to still make this push considering the heartbreaking loss in the NFC Championship last year. Jared Goff looking great, Jahmyr Gibbs as well, David Montgomery, Amon-Ra St. Brown. It sucks to lose Aiden Hutchinson when you do in the season because it feels like he could be that key piece to really keep it all together. We've heard the rumors of Max Crosby possibly coming over to Detroit as well, but that is not going to be a thing that's happening because we know Max wants to stay a Las Vegas Raider. Detroit is still looking in a very solid position, though. The offense is solid. We know that they have a great home field advantage. Dan Campbell as well is able to do MCDC type things. So with the Lions being in this Super Bowl bubble, it's unquestionable why. It's unquestionable why the Lions should be inside this Super Bowl bubble. Maybe not unquestionable for some of you. When you look at maybe you feel like they're bending, but they're not necessarily breaking. I'm confident in the Lions. Look, I think they're doing a great job at coming back into this season, not being so perturbed by the heartbreaking loss in the NFC title game. Now, here's three teams that might be on the verge for some of you. I think one of them is more of an obvious than the other two, but I do have these three teams inside the Super Bowl bubble, not necessarily floating outside. They're kind of half in, half out. The teams that are floating on the outside, I still think they need to do a couple of more things. Most of them are young teams, kind of questioning what's going on with the coaching or the quarterback combination as well. First team here that's still inside, like I said, kind of half in, half out in the Super Bowl bubble. Go ahead and give me the Houston Texans. I think the Houston Texans are a very solid team in this league. We see that they were able to right their wrongs, bringing in C.J. Stroud. Of course, they have D'Amico Ryans in as well. They bring in the Boston and Will Anderson. It does suck to lose Stephon Diggs for the season to an ACL injury. But when you see the way that the Texans are hanging in the AFC South, which is, yes, a very weak division, but when you see how they're hanging in the AFC, which is a conference that has a lot of very solid teams at the top, I know it feels weird to put the Houston Texans in a Super Bowl bubble the year after they really just go from worst to first and do everything that they do with CJ Stroud. But this team kind of feels undeniable to be able to push for a championship. Yes, the quarterback is still young. Yes, the coach is still young. This is a young roster as well. There does need to be, a little more playoff experience here. We know that Stephon Diggs brings that to the table. Fortunately, he is out. We know that Danielle Hunter brings that to the table as well. D'Amico Ryans, obviously being a former player who is at that head coach position. So again, kind of a half in, half out team. I'm going to take a look at the Houston Texans. The Pittsburgh Steelers as well. I almost wanted to put them floating on the outside, but I said it before the season. I'm going to respect what I said and stick to my guns. If you put Mike Tomlin and Russell Wilson together on the same team, they can have Super Bowl aspirations. If you go check out the channel, I said the Steelers need to make a push for Russell Wilson because we knew, weirdly enough, it wasn't working with Sean Payton. I thought Russ was playing at an okay level with the Broncos. Clearly, Sean Payton thought otherwise. The Steelers went and got him. Maybe they heard my video, and maybe they can make a push to the Super Bowl. Like I mentioned in a video earlier on in the year, Mike Tomlin is a phenomenal coach. Russell Wilson is Super Bowl champ, should be a two-time Super Bowl champ. We know how that story goes. The reason I was kind of hesitant to put them in is it's not that I don't think that they have the roster for it, because they do. It's not that I don't think they have the quarterback play for it in terms of Russ, because I think they do. And we know that Mike Tomlin is one of the best coaches in the NFL, despite what we want to say about his 9-8, 10-7, never had a losing season type of record. Mike Tomlin is still at the tops of the league in terms of elite coaching for being the cream of the crop. So if you get a guy like him on a hot streak like the Steelers have been on, playing very sound fundamental football against high-level teams, and as we're going to see it more going out into the year, it'd be hard to pick against these guys going to a Super Bowl with a guy like TJ Watt, with the defense that they're sporting there, with the front seven that Pittsburgh presents to you. And I'm going to take the Philadelphia Eagles as well to be inside this Super Bowl bubble. They're now sitting at 5-2. It feels like maybe those 2022 Eagles, which we'll talk about in the next segment against the Bengals, are back. Jalen Hurts, no turnovers, 4 touchdowns in the most recent game. Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown doing their things that they need to do. The defense being absolutely commandeered by Vic Fangio. Now, I know everybody's not a fan of Nick Sirianni. Let's go ahead and address the elephant in the room. But for a team that was just in the Super Bowl a couple years ago, and their quarterback outplayed the back-to-back Super Bowl MVP, the 3-time Super Bowl MVP and champion, and the roster is kind of, I'm not going to say pretty much the same. It has underwent some changes, but you still got C.J. Gardner there. You still got A.J. Brown. You still got Devontae Smith. And with Saquon Barkley, let me not even give that disrespect or not give that respect to Saquon because he absolutely deserves it. Love his resurgence with the Eagles. I got the Philadelphia Eagles inside my Super Bowl 59 bubble as well. So walking into week 9 of the NFL inside the Super Bowl bubble, Bills, Chiefs, Ravens, Lions, Niners, 50-50 possibly on these teams and the Texans and the Steelers. And I feel like I'm a little more leaned in on the Eagles. Now, let's talk about the 5 teams that are on the outside of the Super Bowl bubble, floating outside, taking a look in. I'll tell you what I think they could be a little bit away from. Titans yard sale still going on. We'll see. What's up, Wesley? Good to see you in the chat. Hello, baby. I see you in there. 976. I know. I forgot to tell you guys, let's push towards 1,000 subs. Once we get to 1,000 subs here on the show, we are able to start getting monetized in the full way from YouTube. You guys remember when I hit the 500 subs, the watch hours are going to be there, no doubt. We're pushing towards 1,000 subs. And if y'all could help me get there, tell a friend, share it with a friend, show the show to somebody that you think would enjoy it. And I would love for them to be able to be a supporter. And thank you for the shirt, babe. Shout out, Mom, for getting me this awesome shirt for the 27th birthday as well. Got me some back-to-back Georgia Bulldogs championship gear. Now, let's talk about the 5 teams that are floating on the outside of the Super Bowl bubble currently. First is the Washington Commanders. They feel like the Cincinnati Bengals or the Houston Texans of the last couple of years. They got their quarterback. They might have got their head coach. They just got sold. The OC and Cliff Kingsbury, I was a little iffy about that hire. You guys know that. I was iffy about Cliff Kingsbury. I was iffy about Dan Quinn, but they're proving me wrong. Jaden Daniels looks great. The relationship that he's building with Austin Eckler and Terry McLaurin and Luke McCaffrey and Zach Ertz is great. That offense is looking elite. And that defense, for the most part over the last couple of years, has been solid. Outside of a year or two in recent memory, I can't remember the exact year, but we know they kind of fell to the bottoms of the league in some of those defensive rankings. And I just want to be sure, because I hate misquoting when a team has played or hasn't played as well as they should have. Okay, so defensive ranks last year, literally horrible. 32nd in points, 32nd in yards. You bring in Dan Quinn, now they're 10th in points, 13th in yards. The year before, they were 7th in points, 3rd in yards. And then the year before the last year, when they lost in the wild card, they were 4th in points and 2nd in yards as well. So you've seen the defense be very solid over the last couple of years, and that's still something that's sticking around for them. The reason I have them on the outside, kind of floating on the outside looking in, rookie quarterback, clearly hard to put him in there at that aspect. Dan Quinn, okay head coach. I still want to see more meat on the schedule. While I do think that the Commanders are a sleeper NFL team and an NFC team, I don't know for the rookie quarterback and a coach that I still want to see more out of, and more meat of their schedule coming up, and them being a young team with them just being sold is enough for me to buy into them for the Super Bowl. And yes, a team just being sold counts. Go take a look at the Broncos year with Russell Wilson's first year as quarterback and Nathaniel Hackett as the head coach. That's enough said. The Atlanta Falcons, floating on the outside, looking into the Super Bowl bubble. I almost wanted to put them in because I'll just be real. As a Saints fan, the Falcons look good this year. But I hate to admit that. That feels like razor blades coming out of my mouth and sliding in between every gap of my teeth. But it's a fact. The Falcons look solid. They have a quarterback who can deliver the football. I told you guys it was the Matt Ryan 2.0 era. Kyle Pitts is deciding to play football again. Drake London, Bijan Robinson, the defense, Zach Robinson. These guys are coming around, okay? We know what the Falcons are doing here this year in the NFL. And yes, they could have more wins on their belt. They could easily be a 6-2 football team, which I think a lot of people would be talking more about them if they were. You could argue they should even be a 7-1 football team as well. But the reason I keep Atlanta Falcons on the outside looking in, it's Raheem Morris at coach. This is not necessarily a coaching quarterback problem that I have, but would you really depend on Kirk Cousins to get you to a Super Bowl, let alone win it? Could you depend on Kirk Cousins to get you outside of the wild card or the divisional round? We know about the playoff mishaps, rather, for Kirk Cousins as well. So that's my issue there. A little bit of inexperience with this team also when you just look overall how young of a roster they are. On the outside looking in, I've got the Green Bay Packers as well. Jordan Love did just get hurt in the last game against the Jaguars, so I am a little curious about his durability. We saw him get hurt earlier in the year as well, so you don't want to necessarily see him continue to go through this same ringer of injury, rehab, and back on the field and then possibly repeat. I like Matt LaFleur as a coach. I do. The Packers are a very young team as well. I think it would be a lot to ask Jordan Love to get you to a Super Bowl. I think he could get you to a wild card game, divisional game. We've seen it when they blew out the Cowboys in last year's playoffs. So I have faith in the Packers. I guess if I would say out of any team on here, the strongest team outside looking in it would most definitely be the Green Bay Packers. I think I would have to say it would be the Packers here. The Minnesota Vikings, another team on the outside looking in. I think when you take a look at what the Vikings offer on both sides of the football, it's very phenomenal. The defense as well. Well, yeah, defense, offense too. But with Sam Darnold, okay, don't think I'm kind of, fumbling on the words here to come up with the Vikings, because there's a lot to say about them. The offense looks solid. We've seen Sam Darnold be comfortable. Kevin O'Connell doing his thing. But when you take a look at, is Sam Darnold really the one to be able to lead this team? Yes, Kevin O'Connell had this team looking solid. Had this team looking very solid last year when Kirk Cousins goes out with his Achilles injury. And it's very unfortunate as well. I don't know what it is necessarily with me and the Vikings, but I don't see them as a Super Bowl contender this year, despite how well they have played. I believe my hangup is Sam Darnold. I really do. Because we know when Sam Darnold is in the right positions, he can play well. I mean, 1,600 yards, 14 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. He's probably on pace for his best year. But in Sam Darnold's first legit real year, in good coaching, yes, we know he was with the Niners. We obviously know he's with the Panthers as well. Very rough situation there. Will Sam Darnold be able to step up to that occasion? Will he be able to step up to the moment and handle the situation as it's needed? That's what I have a doubt about. And the last team floating on the outside looking in, give me the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are a very solid football team. They have regressed a little bit now, getting to that 4-4 record. We know that they had a couple of tough games with the Falcons. They obviously got it handed to them by the Ravens, what it felt like, even though that score was, a little bit close there. The Ravens definitely did make a nice stretch in lead in that game. But with Baker Mayfield, do you trust him? With Todd Bowles, do you trust him? Now, you can't deny what the team's doing on paper. All of these teams that made it in or floating outside of my bubble, you can't deny what they're doing on paper. You can't deny that the talent that they have. But for me, it's either experience, chemistry, and that's really the two things. Does the quarterback have the experience? Do the head coach and the quarterback have the chemistry together? Have they been in similar situations? Have they been pushed up to the brink of adversity, which shows its ugly head in the NFL playoffs all the time? I don't know if Baker Mayfield can do that. I don't know if Sam Darnold can do that. I don't know if a Jordan Love early on yet can do that. Don't talk to me about the Cowboys playoff win. Okay, don't talk to me about that. We know what Dallas does in the playoffs. They've looked horrible at home ever since that game. The Commanders with Jaden Daniels, he's still young. Kirk Cousins, lack of playoff inexperience. That's where my reservations come from with the teams floating on the outside looking in. So Super Bowl bubble on the outside looking in, Commanders, Falcons, Packers, Viking, Bucks. Again, on the inside, I think any of these teams could go to the Super Bowl and represent. Bills, Chiefs, Ravens, Lions, Niners, Texans, Steelers, Eagles. I think it's pretty good to say when you're doing a segment talking about Super Bowl teams, whether they're in or out. You've got 12 teams on there. 13 teams on there. It's almost half the league. You get 3 more, you're right at half the league. Let's get into the Eagles blowing out the Bengals, or what looked like from the box score blowout 37-17, but it was really a close game. What felt like from start to finish until the fourth quarter comes around. Bengals have a couple of turnovers that really don't go their way. The Eagles just continue to keep their foot on the throat of Cincinnati, and they get right on through this football game. You see the Bengals come out at home, though, in this one. I mean, Joe Burrow was 5 for 5 at one point on his passes. He just kept chipping away at that Vic Fangio defense, punches it in with Jamar Chase on the touchdown. So it really felt like it was going to set the tone for the game. And I got a little worried about the Eagles in this one, and really over the stretch of this season in the first quarter. You even look back to the last game against the Giants last year. It is 8 straight games with 0 points in the first quarter, again, dating back to last year's season finale versus the New York Giants. That's a little bit of cause for concern there, when you know that you cannot come out slow in the NFL. If you're going to be put in a Super Bowl bubble like I just put the Eagles in, you have to be able to score in the opening period, in the first 15 minutes of a football game. And we're starting to see those flashes of that Joe Burrow to that Mike Gesicki connection. He had a 3rd and 22 conversion in the second quarter that was just absolutely amazing. I mean, what more can you say about the play that those two made at that point? Along with another 3rd and 7 one-handed catch, it looked like, and I want to say it was a one-handed catch that ended up taking Gesicki out of bounds as well. Philadelphia had 90 yards going into their drive with 3 minutes left in the second quarter. And it just felt like Cincinnati was really owning the game to that point. They were up 10-3. There was a dropped or a well-defended touchdown pass to Burton in the end zone that Burrow threw, however you want to look at it, dropped or well-defended. And then you had a missed 54-yarder from Evan McPherson in this one as well. So this game really could have been more like 20-3. But Jalen Hurts stepping up, turning back into that 2022 version of Jalen Hurts, turning back into that 2022 version of the Philadelphia Eagles, stepping up in this one. He had some big connections to Calcaterra and A.J. Brown as well on that drive to get it going. And the first down scramble to inside the 5. Again, their drive that they were going on, 3 minutes left in the second quarter. They only had 90 yards going into that drive. They come down, they score, and they tie the game up 10-10. And when you score at the end of the first half, then you engineer a great offensive drive to start the second half, and you're going up 17-10. That was really all Philadelphia needed to get sparked up in this one, because even after Cincinnati scored to tie it up at 17-all, another big-time play from a guy like Jalen Hurts. Touchdown pass to Devontae Smith, and then you had the 4th and 1 stop on Jamar to set the tone late in the game. So Philadelphia they got that spark again when they went up 17-10. Jalen Hurts comes out, engineers a couple of big plays, 3 rushing touchdowns in this one. Obviously, 2 tush pushes, 1 scramble in, 1 passing touchdown, which was the amazing one to Devontae as well. Multiple times they were able to set the tone in this game, and it clearly, went the distance for them. You got to love the big time play. I think the biggest play of this game, one of them anyways, Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow throws a deep ball. Isaiah Rodgers pops up, tips the interception to C.J. Gardner-Johnson, and really it was sealed once Gesicki fumbled, and then Philadelphia recovered again. Jalen Hurts in the second half, 9 for 9, 150 yards, touchdown, 155.8 rating, so damn near perfect passer rating. What is a perfect passer rating? I want to say it's 156. 158.3, and he was at 155.8. So Jalen Hurts damn near had a perfect passer rating in the second half. 2 rushing touchdowns in that half. 3 rushing touchdowns in the last 2 quarters in the second half of this football game. Jalen Hurts finishing with 4 total touchdowns. He became the first quarterback in NFL history to have 3 games with 3 or more rushing touchdowns. He's 42 of 59 on his passes, which is 71% completion for 614 yards, 4 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, and 127.4 passer rating over his last 3 games. Shout out to that Vic Fangio defense again. The Bengals' last 4 possessions, 11 plays, 36 yards, which was a turnover on downs, a pick, a fumble, and then the ball game ended. The Eagles outscored the Bengals 13-0 during that stretch, and they had the final 20 points of the game. So when you break it down in that way, it does feel like the Eagles ran away with this one, that they really got themselves into the position to be able to blow out Cincinnati. I think Cincinnati's defense is something that you have to take a look at this season, and especially in this game as well. I don't feel like it's really letting them hang around in ball games as much as it could. They struggled this season to stand up in the red zone and deny touchdowns versus the last couple of seasons with Lou Anarumo. That's not necessarily the case, and you guys heard me on this show. I have a lot of praise for a guy like Lou Anarumo. I have a lot of praise for a guy like Vic Fangio, because those are 2 of the most premier, elite, cutthroat defensive coordinators in the league, and they show up and show out for their ball clubs every single week. But when you have Lou Anarumo not sticking to the necessary game plan, and the mantra of the last couple of seasons, we'll give you yards, but we won't give you touchdowns, and then you lose Jesse Bates to the Falcons, that's looming large over the last couple of seasons for them. Big time. It feels like the Eagles might be turning a corner also. 3 wins in a row. Jalen Hurts hasn't thrown a pick in over a month. His turnovers have subsided the last few games. I mean, it was pretty bad early on this year. It was almost unexcusable with the way that he was turning the ball over. I know you guys remember the Saints game. A pick, a couple of turnovers, just very, very rough. Couple of 4th downs that the Saints stopped on. And, knowing that Philadelphia had some of those issues early on, but it seems like they might have ironed them out. Again, they've got 3 wins in a row now. Eagles are second in the NFL in rushing the football on almost 170 yards per game. Saquon Barkley is on fire as well. No surprise that they are second in the NFL. He is second in the NFL behind Derrick Henry for total rushing yards. He's just over 200 yards away from his 4th 1,000-yard rushing season. Speaking of Saquon Barkley here, over 100 scrimmage yards in 6 of his 7 games with the club as well. And again, Vic Fangio just continues to show you why he was an elite hire for this defense. I knew it was going to be a great hire for this team early on, although they did struggle with the turnovers altogether coming into the game. Only 4 takeaways on the year. Clearly, they rectify that here, get a couple of nice takeaways in the game. what's it called, on the Cincinnati Bengals. They're actually second worst in the NFL in takeaways, and they're -4 in the turnover margin. So, but when you look at yards per game, points per game, rush yards, pass yards per game, all defensively, the Eagles are in the top 10, top 8 to top 10 of the NFL for those categories. So Vic Fangio is clearly doing what he needs to do. I hate the way that Cincinnati season is playing out because I expected more of them. I think a lot of us expected more from them, in terms of Joe Burrow, in terms of that defense, in terms of Zach Taylor's play calling as well. How the offense, again, 11 plays for 36 yards on their last 4 possessions. That doesn't even sound like you sustained a drive. It sounds like you had 3, 6, 9 plays and then maybe 2 because, again, you had a fumble and you had an interception. So it's disappointing to see how the Bengals season is playing out this year. They very well could still get to 10 wins. Joe Burrow is clearly confident of that. They very well could still sneak into the playoffs, but they have a tough division. And when you look at the Ravens, and surprisingly, the Steelers, you're going to have somebody to compete with there. The Eagles, again, it feels like they've been able to right some of their wrongs that they had earlier on in the year. Really kind of the way that they went through last year as well. I said the Eagles were Super Bowl contenders once they beat the Bills in that game last year in late November. I think it was the 26th, if I'm not mistaken. Yep. But yeah, I really like what the Eagles are showing. I want to see more out of Cincinnati, and we'll see what these two teams continue to show to us as we get through the rest of the NFL season. Yeah, man, I'm still live. I'm still right here, Brian. Yes, sir. If you can see me talking on Facebook where you're commenting, I'm still live, brother. 100%. The Saints lose their 6th. Excuse me. Literally fumbling because I know I'm about to absolutely erupt in this segment for you guys. The Saints lose their 6th straight game of the year to the Los Angeles Chargers. I'm not even coming here to recap the game at this point because what more can you really recap when you continue to see the same steaming, hot pile of crap put onto the field that Dennis Allen and this coaching staff and this front office continues to do week after week, letting these fans down? I'm not going to sit on here and continue to go on about that because now at this point, you've lost 6 in a row. The playoffs are out of the question, even though you've gotten, a 4% chance, I think it was, I saw today, to make it. I don't care about Derek Carr coming back. I don't care about a meaningless end of the year winning streak to somehow save Dennis Allen's job because I wasn't doing the show at the time, still very busy in life, but before I came back, it was on my Saints agenda. The top thing, it has to be the final year of Dennis Allen and Mickey Loomis. Don't know if this is going to be it. I'm still waiting for the best notification in the world for when Dennis Allen gets fired because now you have him backing up dirty plays. I mean, we know this guy's in over his skis, okay? Again, I'm not going to sit here and recap the game. I've already made a few complaints that are the same from previous episodes and previous segments, but it doesn't mean that the problem's still not there. The Saints are now officially on the longest losing streak since 2005. That was a Hurricane Katrina year when the Saints went 3-13 and their Superdome got wiped out and they played home games all over the state. Longest losing streak since 2005. Back when they were still the Aints. Through all the years of Drew Brees and Sean Payton, through all the years that we've had, the 2 years of Dennis Allen and the 2 years of Pete Carmichael after Sean Payton left, and the 1 year Sean Payton with no Drew Brees, and in the 2012 to 2016 years, 2017 years, are the Drew Brees and Sean Payton era possibly done? Back to back 7 to 9 years, but you never lost 6 straight in those years. And now Dennis Allen has officially done that. You've now allowed the longest Saints streak of 25 plus points given up in a game. Let's clap it up for that Dennis Allen defense. The last 3 games, you're allowing over 200 yards rushing. Let's clap it up for that Dennis Allen defense because, we look beyond the results. Dennis Allen once led this defense to an NFL record 55 straight games without a 100-yard rusher. An NFL record. Now, we know Dennis Allen's, only beat one team with a winning record, and it was Gardner Minshew. It wasn't even Jalen Hurts of Philadelphia. And got me losing my train of thought trying to actually process things about this head coach of ours. Dennis Allen did establish a good defense for the Saints. But when it's come down to clutch moments, it is broken time and time and time and time again. Last 3 games allowing over 200 yards rushing. The defense has absolutely quit on Dennis Allen. Like I said in the last episode, they look dead. This defense has now, for 6 straight weeks, given up 26, 33, 51, 26, and 26. You did your best to only give up 15 to Philadelphia, all things considered, in that game. Where's the defense? The calling card for the guy that Miss Benson and Mr. Loomis are employing as the leader of this team is no longer effective. It's no longer active. It's no longer there. I'll actually be doing college tomorrow, Brian. I actually don't take calls in to the show anymore, but if you still wanted to comment tomorrow on the show, or maybe if you have a certain time that you want to call in, I'd love to have you maybe chime in with my brother Alan and I when we chop up college. Saints offense got multiple starters back. They had 10 days to prepare, and you mustered 2 field goals. Now, I know it was against the number 1 scoring defense in the NFL. I know that. And you even got Jake Haener a chance to play because Spencer Rattler looked so flustered. And Clint Kubiak, I don't know what's up with Kubiak at this point. I get it. You go through your injuries. You have to shuffle around a very makeshift offensive line. You now have your basically third quarterback who's taken snaps this year. But no downfield shots. Again, something that the Saints kind of prided themselves on in the early weeks of the year, which we know that was a mirage. That wasn't real. The Saints were just waiting to get into the actual midseason form, get banged on a little bit like you do when you play in the NFL, go through the adversity and just the tiredness that the league presents to you, and the Saints broke down. You had 10 days to prepare off of a mini bye week after getting absolutely embarrassed in the Drew Brees Hall of Fame induction. And you mustered 2 field goals. You only scored 8 because your defense gave you 2. So your defense put up 33% of the points that your offense did, and your offense only scored 6. Dennis Allen is even worse on the all-time coaching list. For an update, if y'all remember last year, I said Dennis Allen was 4th worst all-time for NFL coaches that have coached. I think it was it 60-something games, 50-something games at that point? Dennis Allen is now 26 and 50 whatever at this point. 6 straight losses, worse since 2005, the Katrina year. Damn near reverting back to the Aints. Last time the Saints were the Aints. That's how many, that was the last time they lost that many games in a row. But let me reel it back in. Dennis Allen. You know what? I actually want to pull it up because I know it, but I want to read it verbatim. Shout out my boy Darby. Where is it? Here we go. There have been 147 coaches to work 78 or more games in NFL history, but only 2 have a worse career win percentage than Dennis Allen does. Dennis Allen is 26 and 52 with a 33% winning percentage. Marion Campbell is 34, 80 and 1 with a 300 win percentage. And Joe Bugel is 24 and 56 with a 300 win. Enough is as bad as I even forgot my point of thought there. Oh, here's how you know it's bad. I knew it has something to do with Dennis Allen. When you watch a franchise like the Jets, who have been extremely incompetent over the last few decades, and they fire Robert Saleh midseason with a quarterback that they begged to bring in, restructured his contract, and brought in pieces around him. If the Jets can fire Robert Saleh, the Saints can fire Dennis Allen. How many times we've watched the Panthers clean house? Now, given they have a owner who is more business-minded than he is football-minded, but how many times have we watched these bad franchises fire coaches that are just absolutely crapping the bed in front of our eyes? I mean, the Raiders did it midseason. They fired their coach and their GM midseason. Now that's the Raiders, but you had the Chargers firing Brandon Staley. I know you're probably thinking, well, Adam, you probably think the Saints ran better than the Jets or the Panthers or any of these other teams that you've named. Excuse me. And to an extent, yeah, because the Saints have had a great win percentage over the last, decade compared to these other teams. But if you can't get even on the same line as the incompetent franchises in this league to cut bait with a dead weight head coach, the Saints are doomed. Straight up. If you can't even stoop to the level of the Jets and the Panthers, who you play next week, you're doomed. And you continue to employ this man who does not have the locker room. Dennis Allen goes on the radio. I want to pull up this tweet that I put out the other day because this is literally our head coach. Where is it? DA on being a results business. I don't think we look at things the same way as maybe people outside our building do. Clearly, DA. We're not focused on looking in the rearview mirror or what happened in the past. Just like Mickey Loomis says, you look beyond the results. The only way for you to get better in the NFL is look at what you can do and look in the past. That's why you have the damn tape. You going to go out and say you don't watch tape now? You going to come out and give us another reason why you look beyond the results? We're focused on what are the things we can control, what are the things we can change. And that starts this week with going to Carolina and getting a win. I don't think we look at things the same way as maybe people outside our building do. We're not focused on looking in the rearview mirror or what happened in the past. Okay. Let's not focus on the fact that you've lost 6 in a row. Let's not focus on the fact that you've now allowed a longest Saints franchise record of 25 plus points given up in a game defensively. Let's acknowledge the fact that let's not look in the past and look at the fact that you've given up over 200 yards rushing in the last 3 games to a couple of teams that don't particularly run the ball well in the Chargers and the Broncos. Yeah, let's just not look in the past. Let's just, good organizations, man, they look beyond the results. It's an all-time low for the New Orleans Saints. I'm worried about Clint Kubiak being here after this year. And when you watch teams like the Texans, who just, kind of outside of Deshaun Watson, felt like they couldn't get it right at the quarterback position, really bring all the pieces together to build around that small, little playoff run team that they had when, Deshaun Watson goes to the playoffs against the Chiefs, and the Chiefs have that magical first year winning the Super Bowl. But then they go out and get CJ Stroud, and they get DeMeco Ryans. I didn't like the DeMeco hire, but now I'll firmly eat crow. When you watch a team like the damn Commanders, who have changed names twice, get their quarterback of the future, sell the team, get their head coach. When you watch teams like the Bengals get their quarterback right. The point I'm trying to make is I've watched teams rebuild it, reboot it, however much you got to tear it down to get to where you got to go. I've watched 3 teams that, at least in my lifetime of 20 plus years watching this league, be horrible, be a laughingstock, tear it apart, and establish the rebuild. The Commanders, the Bengals, the Texans. But the New Orleans Saints cannot get out of their own way and scrape with the finest chisel, the sharpest tool possible, every specimen of the Breeze and Peyton era out of here. It's frustrating as a fan. It's very frustrating as a fan. I forever love this team. I forever love this logo. I forever love what Breeze did, what the Saints do. It doesn't mean it's not hard. But it gets to a point to where what are these guys thinking or processing other than the fact that we're just trying to sell tickets. We are just trying to fill those seats because eventually the fans are going to stop coming. I mean, let's just ask a real question. Do the Saints tank at this point? Do you tank for Travis Hunter? What do you do? Do you crumble for Cam Ward? I mean, seriously, let's ask this question. And that's how you know Saints fans are down bad, when you're actually considering tanking, like the Jets did before, or like the Patriots could have, or like the Panthers, or like the Bengals. I will never root for my team to lose, / rarely have I ever done so. But I almost want to go and lose to the Panthers. So you can lose to the worst team in the league. I mean, when you look at the schedule for the rest of the year, you've got the no, you don't. You've got the Panthers. I hope they lose that game, make the winning streak longer, make it look worse on Dennis Allen because it's just another inexcusable loss. You're going to lose to Atlanta. The revenge game against the Browns at home, you're probably going to crumble under that pressure to Jameis because you're against two-time coach of the year. Sean McVay's probably going to outcoach you at home when you play the Rams. Maybe you'll beat the Giants. You're going to lose to the Commanders. You're going to lose to the Packers. You might squeak by the Raiders, and you're going to lose to the Bucs. This Saints team is not winning any more than 5 to 6 football games this year. That hurts deeply to my core to say. But here's why I believe the Saints should tank. Because I saw someone say it, and this is what's happened year in and year out. I don't want to go on a losing streak. I don't want to get to a bottom point of a season where Dennis Allen shows us, like he's continually showed us, that he cannot coach, then go on some meaningless middle of the year, end of the year win streak, to still miss the playoffs, still be mediocre, but now you're landing in the middle of the draft where all of those real elite top 10, top 12, top 15 picks are gone. Because I want to draft a quarterback this year. I know the Saints have only done it one time. But even if the Saints do tank, can we trust this damn front office with a high draft pick? I don't know. When you look at guys like Isaiah Foskey, Peyton Turner, Nick Saldiveri, bust. Outside of Brian Bresee and maybe Kool-Aid McKinstry, now that Paulson Adebo's gone, I don't know, man. Because just don't know if we can trust this front office with a high draft pick. I would love to believe that they could do it. Don't get me wrong. I would love to believe that this front office could make a good selection with the high draft pick. But if we passed up on a for sure quarterback that is looking us in the face, I know we need offensive tackle. We need a slew of everything. But like we've always said, I tell you what, you get the quarterback right, you can miss on a couple positions. Just a couple, not a lot, just a couple. But then in the same breath, do I want to pick a quarterback high enough to let Mickey Loomis and, to let Dumb and Dumber and Loomis and Allen mentor this guy, give this guy leadership? That feels like a resounding no. So it's like the Saints are damned if they do, damned if they don't. Do you tank to get a higher draft pick to put it in the hands of a Dennis Allen and a Mickey Loomis? Or do you continue doing the same shit you've done for the last couple of years and end up with the 15th to the 22nd pick in the first round and you end up taking a damn nose tackle or guard? Which, again, we need offensive line. You got to build from the inside out. But with this year's quarterback class, do you crumble for Cam Ward? I don't think you should tank for Travis Hunter, but just making a joke there because we've seen Travis Hunter at number 1 on plenty of draft boards. Maybe going to the Patriots. I don't know. I'll just leave y'all with this. The Saints have almost officially reverted back to the Aints. You're on a 6-game losing streak, which is the longest in 19 years since the Katrina year. One of the worst Saints seasons in franchise history. You've done what you've done with the offense. You've done what you've done with the defense. I don't know how a fan could sit here caring about the future of the team and not want to potentially tank for a higher draft pick. And I just want y'all to know, in over my 20 years of watching this team and watching this sport, I have never once said we need to tank for a high draft pick. Because in a way, I've never felt like it's been that damn bad. But when you have the expectations that you do from the Breeze and Peyton era and the ways that you ran through the league from 06 to 21, it's going to be hard to just kind of forget that. We just don't shake off a winner's mentality and embrace an elite loser like Dennis Allen. Let's get into the sponsor break of this show. I'll be talking about this team all damn night. This has been episode 78 of the NFL with AJL. I appreciate everybody immensely for jumping into the show tonight. You could have been anywhere else in the world, but you're right here tapped in with me on the show. Before we move any further along, please make sure to like and share that stream wherever you may be watching. Subscribe on YouTube as well. Hit the bell so you never miss a post, please, and thank you. And as always, that QR code in the corner of the screen will give you every bit of social media and podcast content at the NFL with AJL. If you can't find us, I promise you're simply not looking hard enough. Y'all please make sure to go leave a super chat, a super like, a super thanks on YouTube. That's one thing I would love for my birthday from you guys in the audience. If you want to still be able to contribute to the celebration of my 27th or even the celebration of the NFL with AJL, still continuing along as this amazing YouTube channel, the podcast, every bit of content that we bring you guys. No donation would be too big or too small. Please make sure to subscribe. We are at 976 subscribers. We just need 25 more to get to that full level of YouTube monetization, which I know you guys want to help me get there, which in turn will help me turn around and give you guys an elite show from start to finish. As always, we're sponsored by Buy and Sell with AJL for all your worldwide professional real estate needs. Whether you're looking to buy a home, sell a home, or invest in real estate, these guys are the team that you need to be with. Get at them on social media at Buy and Sell with AJL. Shoot them a DM as well. You can get on their exclusive monthly newsletter. You can also get on their monthly neighborhood market reports as well. And you can even join their new real estate meetup that they're launching for people to really build that local community. It's in Peachtree City, Georgia, if you guys want to be able to check it out. And thank you, as always, to our second sponsor of the show at PrayStation Online. If you're looking for the best gaming and worship collaboration on the planet, this is where you need to be at PrayStation Online. Use code AJL at checkout for a nice discount, a nice hookup for a promo code on your merch, whether it's a sticker, again, a hat, sweatpants, a hoodie. They can 100% do it for you at PrayStation Online for the best gaming and worship collab on the planet. Appreciate y'all bearing with me on the insane Saints rant. I almost told myself, it's like, what can I even talk about with that team? But, when they get me fired up, I can go on for a while about them. The Browns upset the Ravens 29-24 in Jameis Winston's first start since 2022. We already see Jameis Winston with the pregame, with the postgame speeches inside the locker room. The most intentional, funny man maybe we've ever seen in the history of this league. Baltimore did not come out with a good game plan in this one, though. They only ran the ball 20 times. Lamar Jackson threw it 39 times in this football game. We've been over this, guys. We've absolutely been over this because when the Ravens started out 0-2, Derrick Henry not getting as involved as he should have earlier on in the year, it just wasn't faring out well for them. And I said when Derrick Henry came over, because look at that, Lamar Jackson having his best season as a passer, arguably. I think this is going to be the first time he passes for over 4,000 yards in a season. Taking the pressure off Lamar, not having to run, not having to have him scramble so much. Derrick Henry, there's a reason he leads the NFL in rush attempts, in rush yards per game, in total yards, in touchdowns, because that's what Derrick Henry does. And the yards after contact are a major part of his game. So the Ravens came out with a bad game plan here, just like they came out with a bad game plan in the AFC Championship last year against the Chiefs. It rears its ugly head again here. And this is one of the confusing parts of John Harbaugh's approach that I see at times. And Todd Monken obviously trying to get a little too cute as well. So when you don't let Derrick Henry get involved as he should, your game plan is going to change. And teams are going to clamp onto that. Ever since Derrick Henry has been going off after the Cowboys game, the Ravens have just looked untouchable at times. I mean, when you look at Derrick Henry's stat line since the Cowboys game, 25 for 151 in the Cowboys game, 24 for 199 versus the Bills, 15 for 92 against the Bengals, 24 for 132 against the Commanders, 15 for 169 against the Bucks. That's 11.3 yards per carry, and 11 for 73 versus the Browns. So still 6.6 yards a carry. Derrick Henry, 946 yards, 9 rushing touchdowns, 6.5 yards a carry. It's very clear what Derrick Henry needs to do when he is a part of your game plan in the NFL. Put the ball in the dude's belly and let him go to work. Derrick Henry should have got about 25 carries. You probably should have ran the ball about 10 more times. And if you would have had Lamar throw in 29 times, 25 times, you probably could have came out and won this football game. It's just baffling to know that Derrick Henry, the leading rusher in this league, the most unstoppable player at times in the NFL, only got 11 carries because it never felt like there was a point in the game that Baltimore had to air the ball out. Like they were put so far out of the game, like when Georgia goes up on Texas 23-0. The run game is eliminated. You have to throw the ball 90% of the time to get back in it. It never felt like Baltimore was in that. But why did they play like that? Trying to get cute out of the Wildcat on 4th and 1. Cleveland stuffed it. And outside of a 40-yard run for Derrick Henry, shout out Cleveland. Derrick Henry had 10 carries for 33 yards outside of that 40-yard run that he had from the 40 to the 20. The game plan's very simple for Baltimore. And we know what Lamar Jackson's capable of. He's won 2 MVPs. We've seen him at the top of his game. Give the man a run game, much like he has this year. And he's right back in MVP conversations. He's passing the football at a very high level. Shout out Jameis Winston, man. I mean, is this the same Jameis Winston that was riding pine with the Saints? I mean, let's just be real. No. Or yes, it is, maybe. But when you give him a 2-time coach of the year in Kevin Stefanski, it's going to look different, guys. I mean, let's just call a spade, okay? He comes out looking very confident, very composed, mostly clean pockets, not really letting the pressure get to him. He does take a sack in this game that wasn't, didn't look too great. I thought he delivered the ball very well, very confident. Obviously, the biggest stat line of this game, Deshaun Watson never had a 300-plus yard passing game when he was a Cleveland Brown. Jameis Winston comes in and went for 334 in his very first start. Cedric Tillman having a little bit of a breakout game here. 2 touchdowns, first 2 touchdowns of the year. He scores 2 touchdowns in this game as well. And really, they came at the most clutch moments of the game. You have them going up 20-17 to take the lead, and then you have them going up again for the eventual game-winning touchdown when he burns the safety on the back end and Jameis Winston hits him over the top. Lamar Jackson overthrowing Zay Flowers, though, for a touchdown in the second quarter. That's got to live rent-free in Ravens fans' heads, at least for a little while when you take a look back at the takeaways of this game. And it took him took into the middle of the third quarter to really get Zay Flowers going, because up until that point, he had 1 catch for -1 yard up until then. Excuse me, guys. Woke up with a little bit of a sore throat this morning. Been trying to battle it all day, man. If y'all live in Georgia and you understand the weather, it's no fun. And then getting on a podcast and talking solo for as long as I do, it definitely doesn't help anything. You had Rashad Bateman's drop on the 3rd and 14 being wide open at the 35 was, pretty inexcusable, but I guess it looked like the sun was in his eyes. Really not too sure about that aspect there. But Baltimore was 0 for 5 halfway through the third quarter on 3rd down, and they ended up 2 for 10 on the day. The pressure, I thought, really got to Lamar Jackson in this one. We saw multiple errant throws, some of them across his body in this one, a dropped interception as well. Jameis Winston had some dropped interceptions in this game as well, which, definitely could have turned this game on its head. And I even thought that the Ravens and Lamar were pretty sensational on the last touchdown that they scored in this one. I thought on the, the last drive, they really were going to be able to push to win it all, but we see that it doesn't play out that way. And, you got to admit, anytime Justin Tucker misses a field goal, it seems like it's a tough day for the Ravens, right? Their game plan just gets a little thrown out of whack, and you're just kind of wondering why they're playing the brand of football that they are on that day. But you got to give a shout out to the Browns here. I mean, Kevin Stefanski coaching the hell out of his guys at home, knowing what their quarterback just came off of, knowing that Jameis having his first start since 2022, really being able to jump in and just doing what he did. Very confident, very poised, very good decision-making. Yes, he did have a couple of plays that should have been intercepted. And, Lamar almost threw an interception as well. So I guess you can kind of chalk it up as it is for what it is. Clearly, we know Lamar is the premier quarterback over Jameis Winston. And, I don't think this is really any necessarily cause for concern or should you panic on the Ravens now that they have their 3rd loss and they're at 5-3, because they won 4 in a row. They won 5 in a row to get to 5-2. They very well could be sitting at 6-2 right now. And, I feel like over the last couple of years, the Ravens genuinely only lose when they're injured or when they beat themselves. Like they get in their own way. Prime example with this one here. When you are putting the ball in Lamar's hands 39 times, Lamar Jackson, dropped back over 40 times in this game. He had, quite a few scrambles out of the pocket. Okay. When you have him dropping back that much, I mean, that's huge, and especially for a team like Cleveland, who's going to get after your quarterback. Let's not forget, they have a Z Smith on the line. Okay. They have a Myles Garrett on the line. We know the type of players on that front seven that Cleveland brings. So when you allow them to pin their ears back, or you really give them the chance to pin their ears back because you're throwing the ball so much, again, Baltimore was, they beat themselves. They were never in a position to have to throw the ball out of the yard. They weren't. At any point in the game. At least I thought, from what I was able to see. Sound off in the comments. Let me know if I'm wrong. But, Baltimore really beats themselves in this one. Jameis Winston really steps up. When you only have Derrick Henry run the ball 11 times, but he's averaging over 6 yards a carry, can I interest you in that? Does that hold any weight? When you only run the ball 20 times in this game, but you throw it double the amount of times, that's not a recipe for success for the Baltimore Ravens. Let's just call it what it is, guys. The Aaron Rodgers era so far in New York is a complete failure. The Jets are an absolute disaster right now. And this might not be breaking news or an original take from anybody, but I mean, how disappointing are the Jets this year? Let's just call it what it is. I was saying when the Jets were pursuing Aaron Rodgers, don't walk, run from the guy. Because the Jets had already tried to do as much as they could to at least feel like they weren't under the curse of Woody Johnson anymore, right? The Adam Gase days were long gone. Golly. Okay, I might have witnessed one more coach that was worse than Dennis Allen. Adam Gase was a crazy looking man. I'm going to just say that is what it is. Adam Gase was awful. Dude was very awful. And after that, they try to bring in Robert Saleh, who I thought was a decent hire. We see that he came over from Seattle. We saw that, came over from San Francisco. We knew that he was with Seattle. We saw him play that defensive coordinator role with a couple of NFL teams. They go out and get Zach Wilson second overall, who I did not think was the answer, but they were at least trying to get their quarterback of the future. They had gotten Garrett Wilson, drafted Breece Hall, drafted Sauce Gardner. Some of the best young talent at the top of each of these drafts, so they were starting to stack it up. We knew that they had high draft picks year after year after year. Even Will McDonald coming into his own now. So we saw that the Jets were trying to right some of their wrongs. And when they said that they would literally, quote, send the house, go all out to sign Aaron Rodgers, I was like, okay, they haven't changed a bit. Clearly, they haven't changed a bit, or they're watching Aaron Rodgers highlights from his MVP seasons, and they're not watching his post-game press conferences, which I'm not saying Aaron wasn't good out of his MVP, wasn't good outside of his MVP years, because we know that the year he won the Super Bowl, he did not win an MVP. And he was an underdog against the Steelers and went and did that. But all of the signs were kind of pointing towards Aaron Rodgers, okay? And just for them to do the full send, obviously the horrible tragedy happens last year when he pops the Achilles. And it's just like, damn, are these guys cursed from the jump with the Aaron Rodgers era? I don't ever want to assume that, but it was kind of hard to turn away from. The bad offensive line was, probably the biggest outlier from the jump, and it shows every single week. Robert Saleh, he went 20-36 in his 3.5 years with New York. And again, I thought the hire was decent with all things considered with his previous NFL background. I was never worried about the quality of talent around Aaron Rodgers, but more the age of the players and their lack of experience, not their lack of talent. Breece Hall is a very young guy. Garrett Wilson's a very young guy. Same thing with Sauce Gardner. And I said, all it's going to take is a drop or two from Garrett Wilson, a fumble or two from Breece Hall. Yes, I am being a little, stereotypical in terms of an Aaron Rodgers characteristic there, but we've seen him struggle with the younger players. We saw him with New York not go to training camp, not go to some of these mini camps to mesh with these younger players. And I'm sorry, that's just inexcusable. That is a recipe for disaster, for failure. If you know that this guy has a problem blending with young guys and you're one of the youngest rosters in the NFL, even if you weren't, Breece, Garrett, and Sauce are three of your most important positions, and they're all young dudes. Now, I know A-Rod doesn't have to, vibe with Sauce Gardner, essentially, but Breece and Garrett, absolutely. And you thought it would be smart to chase after him knowing his characteristics. He barked for Alan Lazard. He barked for Randall Cobb. He barked for Devontae Adams. I'm not going to say he barked for them, but we saw him on previous teams. Obviously, the only previous team he was with was the Green Bay Packers. Give me this guy. Give me that guy. And there's nothing wrong with catering to your quarterback to be able to get him some familiarity because every quarterback needs veterans and every quarterback needs weapons. But goodness gracious, I mean, what were the Jets thinking? You go all the way to get him. You restructure his contract. You have this guy go on Pat McAfee, immediately gaining the celebrity type of vibe with the team to tell everybody that his intentions are to play and his intentions are to play for the New York Jets. I won't go as far as saying he got Robert Saleh fired because I just don't know how you can correctly correlate to that. One, did Aaron Rodgers really think that was the right thing to do? Two, him and Saleh literally only had 5 games into the Aaron Rodgers era. I know I'm inaccurate on that specific number of games, but dude even didn't get a half season. He didn't even get a full season with Aaron Rodgers. This is supposed to be the new era of the Jets. It doesn't look good midseason, all things considered. And with Rodgers having the history that he does, it's going to be hard to convince the fans otherwise, I personally think. Now you're sitting at 2-6. You're on a 5-game skid. You just lost to one of the worst teams in the league who's in your division as the Patriots, who hold that very high pick in the draft. And your only 2 wins are against awful teams. The Patriots earlier on in the year, and obviously when you were, beating up on the horrible Titans as well. You got smacked by the Niners in the first week. You come back and win 2 straight games, and you're fooling all the Jets fans. You're making them think it's nice and big and beautiful and bold. And now you've dropped 5 in a row, and you're sitting at 2-6. So, the season's all but over. And I'm not going to say, 8 games into the Aaron Rodgers era, it's a complete disaster and a failure. But as of right now, as it sits, it is a failure. I'm not going to completely declare it as a failure and say, I've seen what I need to see. It's done and over with, because they could very well turn it around. We know Aaron Rodgers has, the intentions of playing 2 years for the New York Jets. I don't really know how that's possible if they don't really have a big overhaul this season, because Rodgers is just not the same guy. Let's call it what it is. He's not. And now you're having him off of Achilles, 40 years old, makeshift offensive line, young players, interim head coach, can't even beat the Patriots. Do I need to go any further? Do I need to give any more reasons as to why this is not looking up for the Jets fans? And hey, y'all see the fleur-de-lis behind me and all around me in this setup, okay? Y'all know I bleed black and gold, so I can't really speak or toot my horn, rather, to say that I'm, a fan of an elite organization. I'm just here to give you my opinions on the NFL with AJL, because that's what I love doing for you guys. To have so much talent and be at 2-6 shows you that front office and coaching matters. You're 24th in offensive yards per game. You're 25th in offensive points per game. You can't run the football despite every bit of talent. You can't score despite every bit of talent. And it's just, it's sad. It's genuinely sad to know that Jets fans had a lot of hope in this. And, when I even made my preseason predictions last year, I really thought that the Jets could go to a divisional playoff game. I mean, when you look at them on paper, yeah, you might not care for Robert Saleh. But when you have a quarterback, it maybe disguises the head coach's deficiencies a little bit. And when you have a good quarterback, it can disguise some of the other deficiencies a little bit. But it's rough. It's rough. It's bad. I'm not going to say it's an abomination, but it's a big-time letdown. And again, it's going to be hard to convince these fans otherwise that Aaron Rodgers was not the reason that Robert Saleh got fired. I hope they can turn it around. I really hope they can get some more competence injected into the team, because as a Saints fan, I'd love to watch, learn, and see what I can bang into the head of Dennis Allen and Mickey Loomis as well. This has been episode 78 of the NFL with AJL. I appreciate the hell out of everybody jumping into tonight's show. You could have been anywhere else in the world, but you were right here tapped in with me on tonight's podcast. Please, 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 before we get out of here, subscribe to the show, like us on YouTube, share the stream wherever you may be watching, tell a friend, show a friend, introduce me to a friend that you think would benefit from watching this show tonight. Please make sure to get down in the comments as well. Leave us a super like, a super chat, a super thanks on YouTube if you would like to donate directly to the cause of the NFL with AJL. As always, that QR code there in the corner of the screen is every bit of social media and podcast content at the NFL with AJL. Y'all don't forget to go give some love to our sponsors at Buy and Sell with AJL for all your worldwide professional real estate needs, and at PlayStation Online. Use code AJL at checkout for the best gaming and worship collaboration on the entire planet. We'll be back tomorrow again with a little bit of a different show up, episode 79. It'll be an exclusive, the AA college football segment with my brother, Alan Spradlin. Could not cover the content without him. So we will be back tomorrow on a Wednesday between 7 and 8 o'clock for episode 79. It will be all college football content. As always, I love y'all. I need y'all. Please go subscribe so we can get to that next level of monetization.